Which one? Which one of these two?
Ms. Sprague.
Miss Sprague. Okay. You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did you say to her?
Sprague.
What is it?
Attorney Sprague.
You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did she tell you?
Attorney Sprague.
A tense exchange in court and a prosecution expert delivering a devastating conclusion about Lindsay Clancy's state of mind.
It is my opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Ms. Clancy was criminally responsible.
Now, Clancy's defense team says a voice commanded her to kill her 3 children, but the prosecution argued she knew exactly what she was doing. And today, we heard some incredibly compelling testimony that could decide which story the jury believes. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We are back yet again, continuing our coverage of the woman that has a lot of people talking, has a lot of mothers around the country talking right now. I'm referring to Lindsay Clancy, the Massachusetts mom accused of fatally strangling her 3 children back in January of 2023. Now, before we get into the testimony, okay, something happened in this courtroom that I will tell you, you do not see every day, let alone in a case like this. This is something that got an audible reaction out of the jury. This is according to our reporter, Sierra Gillespie. She was there inside the courtroom to hear it. She's going to come on later and talk to us about it. But what was that moment? Well, it was a defense attorney asking a prosecution expert how he even got access to Lindsay Clancy's family. Take a listen.
I contacted the district attorney, and I...
Which one? Which one of these two?
Ms. Sprague.
Miss Sprague. Okay. You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did you say to her?
Sprague.
What is it?
Attorney Sprague.
You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did she tell you?
Attorney Sprague.
She told me that she would reach out and attempt to see if I could interview Mr. Clancy and Ms. Clancy's family.
Okay. So did you do that? Did you reach out to her mother?
Did I reach out?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Did someone tell you that she wouldn't speak to you?
Yes.
And when was this, sir? About 2 months ago?
I did not call the mother.
Okay, so the
I
answer
did not
is you
call
did
the
not
mother.
call the mother. Who told you that you couldn't talk to the mother?
Ms. Sprague.
Attorney Sprague, please.
Right. Attorney Sprague.
Now, when Attorney Sprague called you and said you cannot talk to the mother, did it ever occur to you to reach out to me? You're being objective and all.
No.
The jurors actually had a laugh out of that. And the way I look at it is sometimes in a case that is so intense and there's so much pressure on, sometimes an audible laugh kind of can ease it a little bit. And remember what's at stake here. This is a case that has been a battle over who gets to tell the story, which version jurors should believe. Because Lindsay Clancy's defense is not that she didn't do this. There is a consensus that she did this. The question is, should she be held criminally responsible? The defense has been arguing that as a result of postpartum psychosis, she could not appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions, that she could not conform her behavior to the law, that this was not a voluntary, conscious, intentional decision. Now, Lindsay Clancy's defense has been hinging on something very important. We've talked about it before. This alleged voice, a male voice that allegedly told her, commanded her to kill her children. But this week, the prosecution called their final rebuttal witness, Dr. Gregory Sothoff, a forensic psychiatrist who works with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. He said that the voice doesn't add up, that it started and stopped at convenient times, came with no delusions, didn't match anything he's seen in thousands of patients. And at the same time, the prosecution's own expert witness conceded that Clancy was having severe adverse reactions to the medications that she was prescribed, that she was getting worse, that the drugs might have made things worse. So what does that mean for the jury? What are they supposed to do with this? Well, according to Massachusetts law, a person can be suffering from a mental disease or defect and still be criminally responsible. You have to show that you couldn't appreciate what you were doing. You couldn't control yourself. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. But the prosecution claims that Lindsay Clancy could do both of those things, and we're going to explain why. And later, we're going to hear from our Law and Crime reporter, host of the podcast Scandal, Sierra Gillespie. She's been doing an amazing job. She's been in that courtroom every day, watching these witnesses take the stand, watching the jury react, watching Lindsay Clancy, watching everything unfold. She's been her eyes and her ears. And she has seen the moments that maybe don't make it into the testimony. And she's going to tell us what it's been like to be inside that courtroom. So before we go any further, I also want to let you know this is a big case that we're following here on Sidebar. We follow a lot of big cases. And what we do, I don't know if you're aware of this, is we set up this section on our Law and Crime Plus app. It's called the Case File section. And we're opening up the evidence vault on these major cases. So you can inspect the raw body cam footage and the 911 calls and the crime scene photos and the full trial tapes firsthand, because we're kind of limited in how much we can show you here on the show. And you also get ad-free streaming of all your favorite Law and Crime and Court TV shows. You can see the full picture for an entire month free. Head on over to lawandcrimeplus.com, enter promo code SIDEBAR. You can start exploring today. Hope you can check it out. Okay, so I want to start again with Dr. Gregory Sadhoff. He is a forensic psychiatrist. He's worked with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit since 1996. He's treated thousands of patients with psychosis. He's evaluated women in prison who have killed their children, and he was the prosecution's final rebuttal witness. There's a strategy here, primacy recency, right? This is going to be one of the last things the jury hears before they go into their deliberation. Sure, there'll be closing arguments, but in terms of witness testimony, in terms of what they have to remember, this is the prosecution's case, the prosecution's burden. This is who they wanted to end things with. So, with all that said, the defense tried to fight back. The defense tried to undermine him before he even started. They pointed out that he's not board certified in forensic psychiatry because he never did a one-year fellowship. Now, he pushed back. He said he's had decades of on-the-job training, even courses at the University of Virginia's Institute for Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy, that he's even taken a board review course. So the judge did allow him to testify. And then he told the jury what Lindsay Clancy told him about the voice.
She said it was a man's voice. It was very clear. It was external. In other words, it came from outside of her head. That it was constant. So this phrase, "This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids and then kill yourself," was something that was repeated over and over and over and over again during that period that she strangled her children.
And what you've learned in all your training and schooling, is it typical for someone in psychosis to hear a voice only one time, never before, never after?
No.
And again, based on your training and experience, is it typical for someone in psychosis to hear a voice that's constant rather than intermittent?
No, that is not typical.
And what does it mean, the difference between a constant voice and an intermittent voice?
Well, an intermittent voice would come and go. It wouldn't necessarily just keep playing over and over again as if it were on a tape, which Ms. Clancy told me that it was a voice. It's the same thing in the same tone, repeated over and over and over until she had strangled Callan.
And is it typical, based on your training and experience, for someone to hear command hallucinations and then for them to stop abruptly?
No. Committing the act is not curative of the voice. I've not ever seen that.
An FBI-trained psychiatrist who's treated thousands of patients, and he says he's never seen a voice that stops the moment the act is done. But Dr. Sadhoff didn't stop there. He testified about something else that undercuts the defense's narrative: the order in which Lindsay Clancy killed her children.
Ms. Clancy told me that she, after the phone call with her husband, she returned the call, that was when she took Dawson down the steps into her husband's office to strangle him. And I asked Ms. Clancy about what she remembered about how she what she said to Dawson to get him to go down the steps and leave, his sister and brother upstairs. And was there resistance, verbalization, et cetera, crying? And she said she could not recall that. She could only recall bringing him down the steps and then strangling him. And then she repeated that. The next child was Cora, that she went back upstairs and did not recall how she got Cora down the steps, how Cora came down the steps, but then brought her into a different area, kind of a living room area in the basement, and strangled Cora. And then lastly, that she went up to get Callan. And I asked her, I said, where was Callan upstairs? And she said, well, maybe in a playpen, often, she said she couldn't really remember, but then bringing Callan down. And he was the last child to be strangled, all during this time where this voice is over and over again saying, this is your last chance. You have to kill the children before you kill yourself.
Dawson first, then Cora, then Callan. Let me tell you from a legal point of view why this is so significant. If this was a case where a mother, let's say, put all of her children in a car and had it running in the garage, carbon monoxide poisoning, that would be one thing. There is an argument, and I'm curious if you're going to see it from the prosecution in their closing arguments, where they could say 3 separate acts: deliberation, intentionality, right? It's those different moments that point to murder, as opposed to a psychosis that took over, not in just one moment, not just in one act, but here 3 separate acts. That might be tough to convince a jury. Maybe. Now, this witness says that Lindsay Clancy remembered the order. But when Dr. Sothoff asked her how she got the kids to the basement and how they were reacting, she couldn't recall. So the prosecution's other point being, if she was in a psychotic fog, how did she remember the precise order of the killings, right? But the defense's point to this is, that's what disassociation looks like. She was acting on autopilot. She remembered the act itself, but not the details of how she set it up. And the defense seemingly has evidence to back that up, including from the prosecution's own experts. Because before this doctor ever took the stand, the jury heard from another prosecution expert. I'm talking about Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn. He'd already testified that the voice was convenient, a win for the Commonwealth. But then the defense got their turn to question him, to cross-examine him. And that's where things got interesting, because under cross-examination, Dr. Heilbrunn conceded something the defense has been pointing to from the very beginning.
You believe that she had adverse reactions?
Sustained as to the form.
You believe that she had adverse reactions?
To the medication that she had been prescribed since September?
Did she have adverse reactions, sir, up to the time of late January when you had no problem answering questions for the DA yesterday? Did she have adverse reactions into late January?
I believe she was having adverse reactions from the time she began taking the medication in October up to and including January.
Do you think that the treatment that she got from Tufts and Gelada was good?
Objection.
No, overruled.
I don't know. That's not something that I evaluated as part of my evaluation of Ms. Clancy.
You told us that she stated that she was disconnected from her body. Isn't that correct?
That's how she described feeling, yes.
Could not relate to people, felt that she was in a disassociative state. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is right.
Thought that the medication was resulting in this type of development in her life, correct? She felt the medications were contributing to this.
Yes, that's correct.
So if a patient goes to a doctor and says, I'm having these intrusive thoughts, I'm having dark thoughts, I'm having thoughts of, and at this same time frame in December, she's talking about harming the children, correct?
She said that those thoughts had come to her at times.
At times.
Yes.
And she'd mentioned that to her husband, didn't she?
That's what she said, yes.
She mentioned, did you talk to her husband about it?
Yes, I did talk to her husband.
Tell you that she said that to him?
Yes.
A couple of times she said it to him, right?
A couple of times she said, I'm having thoughts, and he asked her, give me more detail if you could, and she said, they're just thoughts, it's not a plan, that sort of thing.
You got this girl living in her house with her kids, saying she's having dark thoughts, saying she's thinking of harming the children, and Patrick's response, according to your testimony, is just basically just power through it, you'll be okay?
Objection.
No, overruled.
Huh?
No, that was not his response as he described it. He asked more questions because one of the things that she had been dealing with for some time are thoughts about hurting herself and possibly the kids. And so what he did was try to get more information about the details. He asked questions that a mental health professional would also ask, which is how often, what are they like? Do you have a plan? Things like that. And she pretty consistently said, no, I don't have a plan. And this is how often it happens, but they're just thoughts.
So let's talk about that, because that's apparently the standard reaction if a patient comes to a doctor and says, I'm having dark thoughts, intrusive thoughts, I'm thinking of hurting myself, I'm thinking of hurting the kids. You say, do you have a plan? That's the question you ask, right?
That's one of the questions that you ask,
If
yes.
the person says, nah, I don't have a plan, I'm just having these thoughts, and you just basically move on, give them more drugs, what do you do?
No, you don't move on. You're aware that the person has reported having those thoughts, and you've appraised the risk, and the risk has to do with things like how imminent is it? How serious is it? Are there means? How is there a plan? What sort of detail is involved, and so on? And so basically what you do at that point is you take it seriously, but you also try to describe how seriously to take it.
Okay. Would you agree, sir, that if she was complaining through December about these unwelcome and internal thoughts? Is that correct?
Yes.
So what do you take from that? The prosecution's own expert agreed, right? Lindsay Clancy was getting worse, not better. She was suffering. She was having thoughts of harming herself and her children. But Dr. Halbrun still said she was criminally responsible. And when defense attorney Kevin Reddington asked him if the treatment she received was good, Halbrun couldn't say yes. This is what's going to complicate it for the jury. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think this is going to be a long deliberation process. I don't even know if the jury's going to get on the same page. I'm curious whether or not this could be a mistrial. And then what happened earlier today? Got to talk about this. So defense attorney Kevin Reddington actually did get Dr. Sothoff to concede something very important, again, under cross-examination.
Would you agree with me, sir, that one of the unfortunate components of a woman who has had a baby and is suffering from postpartum depression and living with it, that can, on a dime, turn into postpartum psychosis very quick, right?
It can be rapid.
And you indicated, sir, that there, according to the DSM, is a 4-week cutoff for symptomology, and then you mentioned that there are others. Is it the World Health Organization that you said that talks about a year?
Correct.
There are some other psychiatric organizations that talk about different periods of time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right?
Correct.
So when a woman is dealing with these symptoms and goes to a doctor, or even you, when you're treating, as you indicated 15, 20 years ago, you were treating, is it important to take a blood test?
It can be.
Based on what?
Based on the presenting symptoms, based on the history, based on medical history. For example, if someone has recently been in a hospital and been treated, there may not be a necessity for drawing blood again, depending on the types of symptoms that you encounter. It's not a standard that everyone who presents to a psychiatrist requires blood tests.
So if you're a psychiatrist who's been practicing private practice for about, I don't know, a month, maybe two, and is prescribing antipsychotic medications, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor medications, benzodiazepine medications to a young woman who is complaining of what the young woman perceives to be difficulties postpartum. Is it important to take a blood test to find out what, if any, prescription drugs they have on board in their system?
To check and find out, did you say what drugs are on board?
Yeah, I mean, you're treating this patient, right? And they're coming off the, hypothetically with you, but they're coming off the street to see a psychiatrist for help, right?
Yes.
And if they're already been prescribed drug after drug after drug by a particular doctor with her 2 months of robust experience, is it a fair statement that you should take a blood test of that person?
Well, it really depends on the medication.
Did they do a thyroid test on Lindsay?
No.
So what do we make from that? Prosecution's own expert agreed postpartum depression can turn into postpartum psychosis, and quickly, and the doctors never did the basic tests that could have helped them understand what was really going on in her body. But the prosecution claims, they argue, that's not the whole story, that Dr. Sothoff also testified about something else Lindsay Clancy did that day, something they say proves she was in control, because she allegedly researched the distance to 3V Restaurant before she ever texted Patrick, her ex-husband, about takeout. Remember, the idea is she sent him out to kill the kids? She researched, or allegedly researched, CVS for Miralax before she ever asked him to stop there. And she allegedly waited until the last minute, right before he left, to add that CVS errand to his trip.
The record shows that Ms. Clancy did a lot of searching prior to that in terms of 3V, the distance, and the like. So there were a number, getting information prior to requesting a text, sending a text to her husband. And in the text, rather than saying, what would you think about takeout, getting takeout, she said, how about getting takeout at 3V? The research for, I think it was Miralax, which was suggested for Cora's constipation. They had had an appointment that morning in pediatrics, and this was suggested that the Miralax and CVS was something that Ms. Clancy looked into sometime after 4 o'clock, but not long after 4 o'clock, and well before she contacted her husband. But that she did not communicate to her husband the importance of picking up Miralax at CVS, who she had called, until really right before he left. So he had planned on going to 3V, driving to 3V, almost 6 miles, to get the takeout. And then she also added on that other errand right before he left.
And so was it significant to you that she had researched the Miralax and looked into CVS an hour before, but just added that that part of the errand on right before her husband left?
Yes.
And why?
Well, it lengthened the trip. It added one extra obligation for Patrick, and that would make for a longer time that he was away.
And so after all of that, right, the voice that stopped, the order she remembered, the planning, the errands, Dr. Sothoff reached an important conclusion, one he delivered earlier today. He believes that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from a mental disease or defect. He even diagnosed her with bipolar 2. But he says that is not enough to excuse what she did.
My opinion is that she did have the capacity to appreciate right from wrong. The children were strangled all in the basement. And according to Mr. Clancy, the door to his office had been closed when he arrived to the basement. Timing was really, really significant in this. There was a window of time that Ms. Clancy was aware of in which she would need to kill her 3 children as well as to kill herself, which she expected would happen. She was conscious of time and told me that she had mapped out the distance, et cetera, because she didn't want her husband to be gone too long. But in this case, I think the issue of time and her husband returning, rather than being a solution for her, was a problem. Well, the phone call at 5:34 in the afternoon, I thought was significant. So Mr. Clancy was at CVS and he called his wife, and she did not pick up, she did not answer. But she called him back and had that ability to deviate from what she was doing to be able to respond. And so had the presence of mind to do that, but also to conceal from him what was going on. Locking the door is another example. I mean, certainly Ms. Clancy was aware of time and the limited amount of time to accomplish this, but by locking the door, it kept her husband from being able to enter the bedroom and therefore being able to see what had happened. So delayed that time. It is my opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Ms. Clancy was criminally responsible.
So that's his final opinion. But the defense, they had to try to take him down, right? They went after his resume. They pointed out his expertise in areas that don't have to do with the major state of mind we're talking about at the heart of this case, postpartum psychosis, trying to raise reasonable doubt.
And you would agree with me, sir, that you've been in here telling this jury all about Lindsay and how she didn't hear voices or did hear voices or exaggerated and lied. Have you written any articles at all on the concept of auditory hallucinations?
No.
Have you read any of them?
Read any articles? Yes.
Yeah, okay. You certainly have heard of Dr. Philip Resnick, yes?
Yes.
And it's fair to say, tell me if I'm wrong, is he literally a world-known authority in your field for filicide or the killing of children by their parents?
Yes, he's well known.
Now, in all of your experience, sir, have you ever treated a woman suffering from postpartum psychosis?
Yes.
When?
In the late 1980s and also during the 1990s when I ran a unit in a state hospital.
So this would be women, 1980s, about 30 years ago or 20 years ago, depending on which one, in a prison that you were...
No.
Oh, was it?
In a state hospital.
State hospital. Were they
Correct.
committed? Were they there because they wanted to be there, or were they committed by order of the court?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Usually committed.
Okay. So other than that, sir, do you have any interest, writing, knowledge about postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis?
Well, it really is a requirement when you assess and treat women to be aware of their histories and making determinations. So that has continued really throughout my career.
And that's where the prosecution's case stands right now. Two experts who agree Lindsay Clancy was suffering but in the end, they believe she was criminally responsible. And now, we're going to hear from someone who has been watching this all unfold herself in that courtroom. And for that, I bring on Sierra Gillespie, host of Law&Crime Scandal. As I said, she's been in that courtroom following this, doing an amazing reporting on this case. Sierra, great to see you. Before we even get into the substance of the testimony, and there's a lot I want to focus on, what is the scene like? Because the last time we talked, we were focusing on there being a lot of supporters for Lindsay Clancy. Are you seeing that today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so outside, Jesse, not too much. I mean, we see mostly media outside. It's not like Karen Reed. A lot of people are drawing comparisons in that way. But inside the courtroom, I will say, completely packed. Some people even have to be turned away. There's that many supporters. I mean, today we saw people who were bringing dogs. That's not something I anticipated to see inside of the courtroom. The same woman who brought a dog, she also brought a bouquet of flowers, she said, for Lindsay's grandmother specifically, Lindsay herself and other people who, you know, maybe were going through trying times as they're watching this really intense trial. So we are seeing some colorful characters here and some support for Lindsay, but it isn't very comparable or comparable, rather, to Karen Reed.
I got to say, look, I understand from a legal point of view, if people side with her defense and believe that she should be found not guilty, that she wasn't criminally responsible. But there is something quite odd to be seeing this amount of fanfare and to see this dogs and flowers and shirts and a sense of, I don't know if the word is joy when you're talking about the death of 3 young children. It's a very unique thing, to say the least. But let's go into the substance. I kind of talked about it before, but I want to ask you, the definition here of what criminal responsibility is. Let's be very clear about that, okay? Because that's going to be what the jury decides. And that came up a lot in the last 2 or 3 days of testimony, including today, right?
Yes, it did. So let's kind of break this down. There are 3 things that are required for somebody to be held criminally responsible here, okay? Number 1, they do not have a mental disease or defect. Number 2, they can understand or appreciate the difference between right and wrong. And number 3, they can conform with the law. So in order to not be held criminally responsible, you have to check 2 of those 3 boxes. And here's what's really important that happened inside the courtroom today. Dr. Stadhoff, who of course was the final witness for the Commonwealth that just rested moments before I came on with you, Jesse. Now he said, I do believe that Lindsay Clancy was suffering a mental disease or defect at the time. He said he believes that she had bipolar 2. So that checks off one thing off the list. That's a win for the defense. However, I will tell you that the other 2 he disagrees with. He says Lindsay Clancy was of sound mind. She understood the sequence of events. She could appreciate the difference between right versus wrong. That's his opinion. He's an expert for the Commonwealth, but it's going to be up to the jury to decide if she meets 2 of those 3 components.
How's the jury reacting to that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the jury, I had close eyes on them today because it's going to be one of the last times I see them, right? They're headed into deliberations likely tomorrow after closing arguments. Now, yesterday, at the end of Dr. Stadhoff's testimony, I'm not going to lie to you, their eyes were glazing over. It was getting a little bit dry. I saw them kind of zoning off. Not too many people writing in their notebooks. However, this morning, they came back. It seems like they had a really good night's sleep. They all were very attentive. They were writing in their notebooks. They were paying attention to his testimony. And then, of course, when Kevin Reddington steps up for cross-exam and eventually recross, things get a little bit more intense. And at that point, the jurors could not keep their eyes off it. They were glued. It was almost like a tennis match, the back and forth between Reddington and then eventually when Dr. Stadhoff would finish his answer. So they definitely are paying very close attention to everything that's being said.
Yeah, and it's very hard to read from that where they might be leaning or what they might be thinking, but clearly they're paying careful attention to the way he's cross-examining this witness who, it's a very clear and direct witness. I'm not surprised that the prosecution saves a witness or witnesses like this for the end. I mentioned it before, primacy, recency. This is one of the last witnesses they're going to hear before they go into deliberations, who's very clear. She is criminally responsible, expert, criminally responsible. But yet, what were the points that stood out to you from Kevin Reddington to say, hey, jury, this expert you're hearing from, not so fast?
So he really attacked the credentials of Dr. Gregory Satoff. He talked about, okay, you work for the Behavior Analysis Unit with the FBI. You were involved with a lot of things in Virginia, the government, the military. And he at one point even said, so that makes you a government guy, right? Now that had to be stricken, but it was out there in the ether. People heard that and kind of wondering, okay, you're really going for the government. You're really going for the Commonwealth here. A couple of other instances that I think were a win for Kevin Reddington were the discussion of insomnia. So because Dr. Satoff has worked in the past with military people, he knows about different types of torture. So Reddington says, okay, insomnia, lack of sleep, isn't that at times used as a form of torture? To which Dr. Satoff said, yes, admittedly, it is. So then Reddington says, okay, interesting, because Lindsay Clancy was suffering from insomnia. You yourself talked about on direct examination how she went 48 hours without sleep. Couldn't that be considered a form of torture here? That was really important as a win for the defense. And in addition, they talked about the bipolar 2, because you and I have talked about this on Sidebar, Jesse, right? The fact that the defense says that some of her symptoms, this psychosis that they say that she was undergoing at the time that the children were killed, could have been brought on by over-medication. And Dr. Satoff did admittedly say, I believe Zoloft may have triggered her bipolar 2 or exacerbated all the symptoms that she had. So even though this was a Commonwealth witness, I do believe at times it was a win for the defense.
And why would Dr. Satoff believe that she's criminally responsible? Because that's the key here, right? This idea of responsibility for her actions, conscious decision, right? A voluntary choice. What was it, in his opinion, that said, despite what could be a serious mental health issue, mental disease or defect, she still could conform her behavior to the law or still appreciated the wrongfulness of her actions?
Yeah, I think he was an interesting witness to end with, because he did say, I believe that she had bipolar 2. I believe that she struggled with mental health. I believe that her suicide attempt was a true attempt. However, I do see inconsistencies about her talking about these hallucinations, the command hallucinations that really are the crux of everything that we've heard here, that she allegedly heard these voices, a male voice rather, only one time the day that she killed the children. And a couple of things that Dr. Satoff said was, okay, for instance, people hearing these voices and having some sort of being compelled to carry out whatever the voices are telling them. Usually doing that, whatever it may be, does not cure the voices. It does not stop them. So most people don't do it. That was number one. Number two, beyond all of this, and these are things that we've heard really from opening statements right with the Commonwealth, include the fact that she researched the 3V restaurant, that she Apple Maps to see how far her home in Duxbury was from the CVS to the 3V and back. Now, this is interesting because it kind of goes both ways. The defense says, okay, he was gone for what, 45 minutes? And during that time, she had this calculated, premeditated, cold-blooded murder? I don't know. However, Dr. Satoff and the Commonwealth do say, I believe that this could have been her chance. She had a phone call with Patrick. If during that time she had heard the voices and was struggling, why didn't she raise the red flag, sound the alarm for Patrick on that phone call, as she had done to Patrick in the past? I mean, she confessed in December of 2022 to her mother and Patrick, I'm having really terrible thoughts. I'm worried that I'm going to hurt the kids. So if she said it then, why the following month when Patrick calls and she's in the midst of this psychosis, did she not tell him, please come home? So I do think that he had some strong things to say for the Commonwealth as well.
I wanted to ask you about, there was this audible reaction to the Jenny Sprague. Can you talk to us about what was going on here?
Okay, yeah, this was interesting, okay? So this is on cross-exam, and Kevin Reddington is asking the witness, Dr. Satoff, when he spoke to the DA, okay? And he says, okay, which one were you speaking to? Jen Sprague? She objects and says, Attorney Sprague. Excuse me, Attorney Sprague. Kevin Reddington looks at her and says, so Jen Sprague, to which the judge says, okay, it's attorney, be respectful here. And at that point, the jurors were looking. I saw a couple of jaws that were like, did he just say that? Okay, what just happened? And then later, Dr. Satoff was talking and said, okay, yes, Jen Sprague. And Kevin Reddington says, you mean Attorney Sprague? At that point, I literally saw jurors stifling their laughter. Some of them even chuckled audibly during it. It was one of those moments where it was like, okay, things are getting kind of tense in the courtroom. It's kind of funny. It's kind of drawing our attention. I don't know what to think, but some jurors had an audible reaction.
And he's an interesting character, Kevin Reddington. I've seen clips of him coming in and out of court where he's addressing the media pretty dead on.
Oh, yeah. So yesterday I came out of the courtroom and it was all of these reporters. It's everyone. I'm holding my mic. I'm getting tripped over. People are elbowing me. I mean, we are close to Boston after all. So I'm trying to get some video of him and it's everyone. He answers the questions, by the way, and then he sticks around too. He'll talk to people. I've talked to him multiple times. He's been very polite with the media. If you ask him a question that he can't answer or doesn't want to, he'll just look at you and say, I'm not going to answer that. But most of the time, he's very upfront. He's very honest about everything. And I do think he's getting a lot of attention because of his tactics in the courtroom.
Yeah, look, he's a good defense attorney. I mean, he's a really good defense attorney.
Yeah.
He's given a lot of people things to think about. And clearly, he has got this kind of fan base or following on social media that I'm seeing quite often. I don't know if that's going to translate to what the jury is feeling or what their views are on him or his arguments. But I'll ask you about what to anticipate with closings in a second. I do want to ask you about Lindsay Clancy. So she's in that courtroom. You're watching her. What has been her reaction, her behavior today?
I have kept my eyes on Lindsay throughout this entire thing, right? Because I want to look at the jurors to report to you what the viewers can't see, but also Lindsay to see her reaction for everything. And I have yet to see her crack a smile, maybe kind of a smirk once, just briefly. But for the most part, she seems to be paying attention. I think she understands what's going on. That's from my perspective, because she's following along with whoever's speaking. She looks at that person, whether it's the witness or the judge, whoever it may be. She seems to be following along, but she seems very sad, very somber. At one point, when the cross-exam got kind of heated today, Kevin Reddington's going in, there's objection after objection. I saw her, she closed her eyes, she took a deep breath, almost to restart or reset herself, like, okay, I'm here. Let's get through this. It seems like her and her family, they're all very somber. Their shoulders are kind of slouched down. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I just think that they're mentally exhausted to be put through all of this and to have her journal entries read across the world. It's all over TikTok. We're talking about it. I mean, it is evidence. But to have something like that opened up to the world, I think it's mentally exhausting for her and her family.
Yeah, it's a good point. And look, it's not ending because we're about to go into closing arguments and then the deliberations, which is an incredibly tense moment. So talk to me about closing arguments. What do you expect from both sides here?
Now, I do have a bit of a heads up, at least on the defense's side of things from Kevin Reddington, because I talked to him about this yesterday, and he does not use notes. We saw this in openings, right? He goes in, he speaks from the heart, he knows this case inside and out, and something that I will say to his credit, he doesn't have a defense counsel with him. He's doing it all. He's paying very close attention to everything, and I think he's just going to go back and hit on the points that he has throughout this entire case, talking about the psychosis of it all. We believe that she was undergoing this moment of a mental break. She can't be held criminally responsible for all of this. Look at the way the system and doctor after doctor failed her, okay? And then for the Commonwealth, I do think they're going to go back and pull on the heartstrings. This is my anticipation because, of course, we all have that image in our mind of attorney Jen Sprague holding up the outfits that all of the kids were wearing at the time that they were killed and the exercise bands. I mean, that is a moment that no one is going to forget. And the jurors, you have to remember, also heard that 911 call. I think she's going to play on those emotions, whichever of the prosecutors are going to present here, because Attorney Buckingham did present the openings. Whoever it may be, I think they're going to pull on the heartstrings and lay out the facts, saying, we believe she was criminally responsible. We have multiple expert witnesses who say the same. It's up to you, the jurors, to decide her fate.
Do we know how long the closings are going to be and if definitely the jury's going to get it tomorrow?
I believe that they're going to get it tomorrow. I mean, I haven't heard anything about a time limit, but when I was speaking to Reddington, he said, I don't expect to go longer than a half hour. Who's to say he might go toward an hour, but I don't think that they're going to be extremely long tomorrow.
Okay, well, we will see. You're going to be there. Sierra Gillespie, thank you so much, as always, for your terrific reporting on this tough case. We'll continue to follow it.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.